Matthias Fischer stood on the terrace of his penthouse, gazing out at the tranquil beauty of Lake Zurich. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine trees and the faintest trace of snow, while the lights of the city shimmered softly across the water. Despite the picturesque view, a storm of emotions churned within him, a turmoil that had been festering for some time. At 53, Matthias was a well-established figure in the world of Swiss finance. He was a senior partner at one of Zurich's most prestigious investment firms, known for his sharp intellect and unshakable integrity. To the outside world, he seemed the epitome of success, but inside, his thoughts were a labyrinth of memories, doubts, and questions that refused to settle. It had been 2 years since his quiet divorce from Elena, an art curator whose elegance and wit had once breathed life into his otherwise structured existence. Their separation had been abrupt, without much explanation, leaving a painful void in his life. He had tried to fill that void with work and solitude, but neither had succeeded in numbing the ache that lingered from their lost connection. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts, and his assistant, Daniel, stepped in hesitantly, holding an envelope. "Herr Fischer, this arrived for you." "It seems urgent," Daniel said, his tone cautious. Matthias took the envelope, noting the official seal of the Zurich Correctional Facility. Opening it, he found a brief message that immediately captured his attention. "Matthias, I need to see you. It's important. Please come. Elena." The word struck him like a sudden blow, sending a wave of conflicting emotions through him. Curiosity, resentment, and an unexpected flicker of concern. He wondered what could have possibly led Elena to a place like prison. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air as Matthias was led through the cold, stark corridors of the prison. The clanking of metal doors echoed around him, each sound reminding him of the distance that had grown between him and the woman he had once loved. He arrived at the visitation room, where Elena sat, looking more fragile and vulnerable than he had ever seen her. Her usual poised demeanor was gone, replaced by palpable anxiety. Beside her sat Luca Bien, an art dealer with a reputation as colorful as his collections, a man Matthias knew well, and not in the best of circumstances. "Matthias," Elena began, her voice strained. "Thank you for coming." He remained standing, his gaze cool. "This is unexpected. Why am I here?" Luca leaned forward, his eyes earnest and full of desperation. "We need your help, Matthias. We've been falsely accused of art fraud and money laundering." Matthias raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And what does that have to do with me?" Elena clasped her hands tightly, her eyes welling with unshed tears. "You're the only one who has the expertise and resources to help us prove our innocence." A bitter taste filled Matthias's mouth. "You expect me to help after everything that happened between us?" Elena's eyes pleaded with him. "I know I have no right to ask, but please, Matthias, for Sophia's sake." At the mention of their daughter, Sophia, a soft flicker of warmth and guilt stirred within him. He hesitated, the emotional weight of the request pulling at him. After a long pause, he sighed. "I'll consider it," he said, his voice tight, turning to leave. Driving back through the snow-dusted streets of Zurich, Matthias's mind swirled with memories. He thought back to the night he had discovered Elena's affair. He had found a ticket stub to an exclusive art auction in Venice, an event she had claimed to have no interest in. Suspicion led him to hire a private investigator, who confirmed that Elena had been involved with Luca. The betrayal had shattered his trust in her. For a time, he had been devastated, but he buried his pain and anger for Sophia's sake. Their divorce had been swift and quiet, citing irreconcilable differences, and Matthias threw himself into his work to numb the emotional turmoil. Now, the two people who had betrayed him were asking for his help. The irony stung, but he knew he couldn't ignore the request, not when it involved his daughter. At home, Matthias found Sophia waiting for him. She was 25 now, a talented violinist whose music had been a solace to him during his darkest times. Her dark eyes, so similar to his own, looked up at him with concern. "Papa," she said softly, her voice filled with worry. "I heard about Mama. Is it true she's in prison? Matthias nodded, weariness settling heavily on him. Yes. She and Luca are facing serious charges. Sophia's gaze was imploring. I believe they're innocent. Matthias studied her face carefully. There's something you need to know, she continued, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. A few months ago, I overheard a conversation between Luca and a man named Victor Petro. They were discussing an art deal that didn't seem right. I think Victor set them up. Matthias felt a spark of intrigue at the mention of Victor Petro. The Russian oligarch was notorious for his involvement in high-level art forgery and money laundering, a name that Matthias had come across during his research on illicit art dealings. Sophia nodded. Yes, I've done some digging. He's deeply involved in art forgery and money laundering. I think he's the one behind everything. Matthias's mind raced, but his voice remained calm. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Sophia hesitated. I was afraid, she admitted, her vulnerability shining through. But now Mama needs our help. Matthias placed a hand on her shoulder, a reassuring gesture despite the chaos swirling inside him. I'll look into it. That night, Matthias accessed his firm's confidential databases, sifting through financial transactions and offshore accounts. Patterns began to emerge. Shell companies linked to Victor Petro, suspicious art acquisitions, and funds funneled through banks in Luxembourg. As he dug deeper, a particular detail caught his attention. A series of wire transfers labeled with the code Swan Lake. Matthias paused. He recalled that Victor Petro was an avid patron of the ballet, especially the production of Swan Lake, which was a personal favorite of his. The code seemed like a subtle signature, almost a taunt to anyone who might uncover his tracks. It was a lead, a clue that could expose the true extent of the criminal network behind the charges against Elena and Luca. Matthias knew that if he wanted to get to the truth, he would have to follow this trail, no matter where it led. Matthias sought out Isabella, an old acquaintance who was renowned for her exceptional skills as a forensic accountant. She was known for her ability to untangle the most complex financial webs, and Matthias needed her expertise. Upon seeing him, Isabella greeted him warmly, her smile rising as she asked, "What brings you to my corner of the world?" Matthias wasted no time and shared his concerns. He explained the situation, detailing his findings. "I need your help to connect the dots," he said, eager for her insights. Isabella reviewed the documents he handed her, her sharp eyes scanning the details with precision. "Petro is meticulous," she remarked, "but everyone slips up eventually." Matthias, feeling both anxious and hopeful, asked, "Can you help?" Isabella, without hesitation, replied, "Always. But be careful. Petro is dangerous." As they began to investigate further, they uncovered encrypted emails and messages suggesting that Petro had been orchestrating a scheme to frame Elena and Luca, two individuals Matthias knew, in order to eliminate competition in the art world and sell old scores. It became clear that Petro's machinations went deeper than they initially realized. In fact, Matthias discovered that his own firm had been indirectly involved in transactions with Petro's companies. The threat Matthias faced was now closer and more personal than he had imagined. One evening, Matthias received a chilling package. Inside was a single white feather and a note that read, "Stop digging or you'll swim with the swans." He showed the message to Isabella, who immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "He's on to us," she said, her face tightening with concern. "We need to act fast." Matthias, however, hesitated. "If we move too soon, he'll cover his tracks. We need to be careful." Isabella, ever practical, asked, "What's your plan?" Matthias looked out at the city lights, deep in thought. Finally, he spoke. "We set a trap. The plan was simple but clever." Matthias orchestrated a fictitious investment opportunity, a rare collection of impressionist paintings that were about to be sold privately. He leaked information about this opportunity through discreet channels, knowing it would inevitably reach Petro. Isabella, with her forensic expertise, ensured that the financials for the sale were enticing yet traceable, designed to expose any illicit transactions. As anticipated, Petro took the bait. He attempted to launder funds through the dummy corporation Matthias had set up. With the help of Inspector Carl Weber, they monitored the transactions closely. On the night of the supposed sale, law enforcement moved in swiftly. Petro was caught in the act, attempting to finalize the deal with incriminating evidence in hand. The news soon broke of the international sting operation, hailed as a major victory against art fraud and money laundering. The following day, Matthias visited Petro in custody. The once dominant figure now seemed diminished, a far cry from the menacing persona he had projected. Petro sneered at him, saying, "You think you've won." Matthias replied calmly, "There are others." But justice has a way of catching up. Petro's expression darkened as he warned, "You're a fool to trust those who betrayed you." Matthias felt a pang of discomfort, but he remained firm, replying, "I trust in doing what's right." With Petro's arrest, Elena and Luca were released from custody, their names cleared of any wrongdoing. Matthias was urged by Sophia, another key figure in the case, to meet with Elena. They sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the air filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Elena, her eyes sincere, began, "Thank you." She paused, looking down. "I know I don't deserve your help." Matthias regarded her thoughtfully, replying, "People make mistakes, but this was about more than just us. It was about stopping a dangerous man." Elena nodded, and with a sigh, she said, "I regret the pain I've caused you." Matthias responded softly, "What's done is done. I hope you find your path forward." Later, back at his office, Matthias found Isabella waiting for him. She asked, "How did it go?" Matthias reflected for a moment. "Closure is a strange thing," he said thoughtfully, "but necessary." Isabella smiled gently, acknowledging the gravity of their journey. "You've done a good thing," she said, her tone sincere. Matthias met her gaze and replied, "I couldn't have done it without you." They stood in silence for a moment before Isabella suggested, "Perhaps we make a good team." Matthias agreed, a hint of warmth returning to his gaze. "Perhaps we do." Months passed, and Matthias, now with a renewed sense of purpose, initiated programs within his firm to promote ethical practices and mentorship. His journey had transformed him, and he felt a stronger sense of commitment to doing the right thing. He and Isabella, too, had grown closer, their professional collaboration blossoming into a deep companionship. One evening, they attended a concert where Sophia performed. Her violin filled the room with emotion, and as the final notes lingered, Isabella whispered, "She's remarkable." Matthias nodded in agreement, pride evident in his voice. "She is." Later, as they strolled along a lake, the moon casting a silvery path on the water, Matthias reflected on the tumultuous path that had brought him here. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said softly. Isabella, walking beside him, took his hand. "It's how we respond to those surprises that define us." Matthias smiled, a sense of peace settling over him. "I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but freeing ourselves from its hold." Isabella nodded in agreement, and opening our hearts to what the future may bring. As the stars shimmered above, Matthias felt a profound sense of peace in the journey they had shared. Through shadows and light, we discover not only the depths of others, but the resilience within ourselves, he mused. By embracing forgiveness and pursuing justice, we unlock the doors to new beginnings and unimagined possibilities. Looking at Isabella, he felt hope and gratitude. "To new horizons," he said. She echoed his words. "To new horizons